Today we're diving into a topic that hits home both literally and figurative, and that's discussing the topic of what the hell has happened to London. As you know, I've spent a lot of time in London, both as my former hometown and still a place of work that I frequent, but lately there has been an alarming rise in thefts targeting luxury items in London. And while we all love indulging in beautiful things, it's so unsettling to see how times have really changed so drastically in this city. And it's even worse considering that not too long ago, you could walk down the streets of London without a care in the world about carrying your favorite luxury handbag or even just your phone freely. Because now, more and more people, including myself, are adapting their lifestyles, their habits just to feel safe. Creators in the luxury community are also even making videos about the safest bags to carry to avoid getting robbed or tips on hiding your valuables. And I think it is so sad that we're having to adapt our behaviors for these criminals. And this issue isn't even just isolated to the luxury community either, because people are targeting not just high-end products, but even everyday essentials. Thefts are becoming even more organized, even more brazen, and disturbingly normalized, to the point that cheese is now even being targeted because of its resale value. I wanted to sit down, have a chat, unpack this growing trend, and discuss where we go from here. And I would love to hear your thoughts and experiences down in the comments below. Now, of course, I should preface that I have had many a fond memory of life in London. I've lived there for many, many years, if not decades. And it honestly used to be a place where I felt quite safe walking around my phone, carrying a designer bag. But the landscape has since shifted drastically. And I want to say it's shifted in the last couple of years to 5 years, where we're seeing a lot of articles just one after another around how this store got broken into, that individual got robbed, someone's apartment got broken into, and someone got all their bags stolen. And so I thought I'd just run down a few instances and statistics with you on just this scale. But first off, let's talk about Cellier. I know a lot of you in the community will know of them because they're a luxury resale store. They're based in Chelsea. I've walked past them many times. I follow them on Instagram. They always have the most beautiful bags. But sadly, they've experienced a really devastating break-in recently. And this is on top of a break-in that I believe they had just a year or two prior. In the Chelsea or Knightsbridge area, you'd imagine it's quite safe. I've walked there many times myself because I often frequent Harrods. It's not more than like 10 or 15 minutes walk from there. And it's a very quaint and very, very peaceful, seemingly peaceful anyway, neighborhood. And so it's even more crazy that not only did thieves target this store and they made off with basically $500,000 worth of goods. Apparently the theft was only 3 minutes. They knew exactly what to go for. They just ransacked and looted the whole shop. Given the quantity of bags and goods that were stolen, this will make a dent in their bottom line. It was a whole ordeal and essentially just surfaced the lack of effective action from the London Borough. The authorities just couldn't do much about these crimes. In fact, I think one of the investigating officers was out of office on annual leave, so it delayed the investigations, by which time bags can already be shifted halfway around the world. And even outside of Cellier's experience, this is not an isolated case. And I think one of the biggest examples that relates to luxury goods anyway is that of the luxury watch thefts. And it's actually happening so much in London to the extent that thieves are actually known now as Rolex rippers. Actually, since 2019, I read this really shocking stat that nearly 50,000 luxury watches have been stolen across the UK alone, and London accounts for over 28,000 of these cases. And if that's not bad enough, over 6,000 of those luxury watches were reported stolen in London in the past year, which means there's about 70 phones stolen per day in London. And actually, it's not just the theft of these watches or luxury goods, it's actually violence as well, because apparently 20% of these incidents in London involved aggression, as seen in cases like the robbery of Amir Khan, who's a very famous boxer in the UK. He was actually robbed at gunpoint for his £72,000 watch. So it's not only a risk to have these goods on you, but also to your life itself. And so it really dissuades me, to say the least, of wearing my Rolex out and about. And in addition to that, designer handbags have also seen a huge increase in thefts. Since 2022 alone, there has been a 19% increase of bags like Louis Vuitton and Chanel. Those are the prime targets, as you can imagine. And actually, Westminster wins the top spot of the list of boroughs with the highest number of thefts. And that's actually followed by Kensington and the Chelsea area, which is just so surprising to me because in the past, I've only ever had positive interactions in those areas. So it's so sad that this is happening in some of the most expensive boroughs in London, but also the most safe in previous instances. And to my point around thieves not discriminating on victims, they will go for individuals on the street as well as more organized crimes in people's homes. Not more than 2 weeks ago, Charlotte Crosby, who was one of the stars of Geordie Shore, was actually robbed at knife point. I think there was a machete involved. She was pregnant as well. Thankfully, she and her family were safe. I think they chased the burglars out. But of course, there was a lot of psychological damage, physical damage as well. I do believe some goods were actually stolen. These thieves do not discriminate, and often they are very organized, not just in the way that they work the streets in a gang. I myself have had some near misses. They will be on the lookout for your CCTV, your social media, people that you know, in the way that they will go out and execute a theft of your item. And of course, it would be remiss for me not to mention the staggering amount of phone thefts that are happening in London, whether it was stolen by cyclists or moped riders in just seconds. And this is one of the most prevalent forms of street crime that I'm noting affects both tourists and residents. I'm not sure about you, but I am being fed constantly, reel after reel, about people's phones being stolen, even home invasions as well. It is just crazy that no one is safe. Your home doesn't even feel safe anymore, especially given that thieves are often using social media to track when people are away. And high value goods stores as well, your department stores, your luxury stores, they're also being hit so much more frequently in London as well as across the Western world, and not much is being done about it to bring these criminals to justice. While these statistics are shocking, what's even more shocking is that how we are fundamentally changing the way we live our lives. I've made a lot of significant changes in my life to feel safe, and I know many of you out there in the luxury community have had to do the same, whether by will or by force. And it's really to the point where I didn't realize how observant and how anxious I was being in public. But I've just had to resign myself to the fact that this is just how life goes whenever I go back into the city. The first kind of behavior that I've changed when it comes to luxury is that I no longer wear over luxury designer items when I'm out alone. For me, it's just not worth the risk. Let's be honest, when you're commuting, you're already distracted enough as it is. There's so much stimulus, especially in a packed tube or train or something. So it's just not worth the additional stress of then protecting my items, especially if someone's going to try and snatch it from me. And of course, when it comes to work anyway, I don't want to be gaudy and flashy. It's just not necessary. That phase of my life is over anyway. So it's a bit more of an easier change. But I know for a lot of individuals out there, especially if you had to save and work quite hard for a luxury item, you want to get the mileage out of it. But for me personally, I would much rather enjoy and appreciate my items in the comfort of my own home than out and about. Of course, if I have luxury items that are logoless or have very minimal branding, then I will make a decision. I'll make a call as to whether I'll wear them. If it's one of those where you know, then I might get away with it. But in general, I won't be wearing a Chanel classic flap or anything with those higher tier logos on me because they're too highly recognizable. I'm personally focused more on understated brands now, like your Monars of the world. So for example, I have this beautiful Gabrielle clutch. It's one of those logos where if you were part of the general populace, I don't think you'd understand what this M is, but if you're a luxury girl like me, if you know, you know. I'm really into having bags that not everybody else has, and for the price points as well, they are a lot more wallet friendly and of course safer to bring around. And outside of changing my buying habits, I'm even storing some of my valuables off-site. I have other security measures, which, let's be honest, I'm not going to reel off in this video because while it may help many of you out there, there are also some people that I also don't want to inspire. And I'm also just generally, like I mentioned, decluttering so that there is less mental and physical load to worry about. And on the odd occasion where I do want to wear luxury goods, I'll make sure that I'm going straight to the location, ideally in a private or my own car, and or I'm also with my partner. Even for me, like, I know martial arts and I can do self-defense, but I suppose people wouldn't necessarily expect that of me. But certainly if I do have what is effectively a human shield and bodyguard of sorts, people will just, in the nature of humans, size him up, size me up, and they will just think it's not worth it. And now let's talk about social media precautions, because of course this is something that affects all of us to a certain extent. I am very, very mindful of posting my location. I mean, I basically don't do it. You'll see that I post things days, even weeks after it's happened, predominantly to prioritize my safety and security, as well as obviously enjoying things in the moment, because it's nothing worse than somebody with their phone out posting in real time when they're missing the enjoyment that they could be having. But I personally just make it a point to only post when I've left a certain location. I never share details about my living circumstances, and I personally do not intend to. Just be very mindful of what you put out there, as well as your extended friends and family, your other connections. Remind them of posting in real time on the risks and effects of that, because you never know who is watching. The internet is full of sleuths. Especially do not post when you are out on holiday, because while they may not be in Morocco or Cyprus, wherever you are, they may know from various pieces of research that they've managed to put together that you are away from your home. And of course, we have to contend with the rise in phone thefts. I actually have, as many will nowadays, a dongle that I wear around my neck, or a lanyard rather, and I also have a pop socket type D-ring to essentially thread my hand through, so that my phone is basically surgically attached to my hand. But of course, I don't want to invite that drama, so in most cases, especially if I'm actually in the process of commuting, not just like in a stationary area where I can observe my surroundings, I just won't have my phone out. And I also won't have my headphones on if I know that it's a very high traffic area, or that I do not have a good 360 view. In those instances, no podcast, no song is worth the risk of getting mugged. So nowadays, I'm very mindful about not walking with my phone in my hand or even in my pocket, especially if it doesn't have a zip as well. And now I totally have an appreciation for why tourists wear their backpacks on their front, as silly as it does look. And those, I think, summarize the short-term changes that I've had to make. Now, looking longer term, bigger picture, while it's obviously better to be safe than sorry, to be observant, of course, of your surroundings and control your environment, I'm not gonna lie, it's exhausting to do this every day. And especially the more that I travel to countries far and wide in this world, I'm reminded of the fact that not every city has to be like London. Not every country has to be as chaotic and crime-ridden as the UK has become. It honestly feels like I'm living in Gotham City and we need a Batman, but no one is coming to save us. If we are on this downward trajectory, if we're on this sinking ship, I don't want to be on it, if I'm being frank and honest with you all. And I've obviously covered in the past my desire to leave the UK. I'm still working towards that goal, but obviously it takes time to be able to uproot your life and move halfway across the world, and want to make sure it's a move that is to the right place. So that's absolutely still on the table, because you shouldn't just resign yourself to a certain way of living, especially in an environment where you actually don't feel welcome and people feel entitled to your goods. Moving out of the UK is still very much on the agenda, and maybe by that point the powers that be will learn that they cannot treat individuals who are hardworking, who contribute to the society, this way any longer. Because of course we shouldn't just have to adapt. It's so important, therefore, to press the government and the city officials for action. What on earth, for example, is Sadiq Khan doing about this? Why does it feel like there are so few consequences for these crimes? We need stricter enforcement and deterrence measures. Otherwise, these thefts will continue to rise as they are, and you're just going to drive a bunch of people away, not just from the city, but out of this country. And those are the individuals that, frankly, this country is relying on as the backbone keeping this economy afloat. And all is left are the petty thugs and criminals. London and the UK are going to have a big problem on their hands, because these individuals are not contributing to society. Anyways, let me just close this video before I go on a deeper rant and rabbit hole on this particular topic. Of course, this is just such a sad reflection of the world that we live in, one that we really need to address. So I would love to hear from you in the comments, whether you're in London or in a city facing similar issues, how are you adapting? If you have any safety tips or experiences you'd like to share, let's start a conversation down in the comments. I'm sure everyone would find it super valuable and would feel a lot less alone. But anyways, thank you as always for watching, and I'll catch you in my next one.